Hello YouTubers, my name is Attila Mate from Blue Sky Photography, and today I would like to talk to you about shutter speed, and let's talk a little bit in detail about shutter speed and its effect on your photography. Now, if you know and you are good in photography, probably this video will not be very interesting to you, but in the same time I would suggest, if you have time and if you enjoy these kind of videos, you can have a look because you might learn something. In the same time, if you have anything to add to this video, or if you think that I left out something of this video, feel free and leave a comment down below, because I'm only a human being and I try to share my knowledge with other people so they can learn photography, and I think that photography is really helpful to this world, and it helps us to focus on the beauty of this world, and I think that this is very important. So let's talk about shutter speed. Now, shutter speed is a part of the exposure triangle. Now, exposure triangle is something where you control the brightness or the darkness of the image. I will try to explain as understandable as possible. I won't really use these photographic terms, I try not to at least, and I try to explain so anybody can understand. Now, the exposure triangle, it is about shutter speed, aperture and ISO. Today we are talking about shutter speed, how you can control the brightness and the darkness of a photo, by shutter speed. Well, shutter is, in the camera, there is a door, let's say, or something which blocks the sensor. It blocks the light by getting to the sensor. So the speed, the shutter speed, it means the speed of that shutter moving up and down in a second. Now it can be from 1 second or 30 seconds until up to 1/8,000th of a second, or even sometimes electronic shutters can go until 1/32,000th of a second, which is absolutely lightning fast. Now, how this controls your image's brightness or darkness? Well, it's simple, because if the shutter is moving faster, that means that less light has gone to the sensor. There is only a smaller amount of light which is gone through to hit the sensor, and that's why your picture will be darker or will be brighter. It depends on your shutter speed. Now, shutter speed has also different effects, and it also has downsides, not only a good side, like this is a good side that you can control your images, but in the same time it has also downsides. So you have to know what is the effect and how it will look in your photo in order so you can control it. Now, the example, very simple example, if you have moving subjects in your photos, then the shutter speed will be, if the shutter speed is low, then your photo will be blurry, because there is motion blur. It's called motion blur. It is in your photos. Now, if the example are you photographing walking people, your shutter speed has to be usually, that's a golden rule, that it has to be, what's the focal length of your lens, equal with that. So it means if you have a 50mm lens, your shutter speed minimum has to be 1/50th of a second. Now, don't forget that if you use an APS-C size sensor, then you have to apply the crop factor. Now that means it's 1/75th of a second, because it's a 1.5 crop factor. If you use micro four thirds, it has to be then 2 seconds, because, sorry, not 2 seconds, 2 times crop factor. So it has to be then, instead of 1/50th of a second, 100th of a second. So, and so on and so forth. Now, in my opinion, I try at least do not only equal with my lens, I try to do even more, because that's my experience, that if you have faster shutter speeds, your photos are much sharper. Obviously, it depends if you have in-body image stabilization or not. That also helps a little bit, but until a certain degree, when your shutter speed goes up, that is kind of useless. So what I do, if I have a 50mm lens, I try to keep my shutter speed on a full frame at 100th of a second. If I use APS-C, it should be minimum 1/75th. I try to use at 1/50th. So it's kind of like double when it's possible. Obviously, if it's a very stationary subject, that is not the case, then you can go a little bit further down. Now, I will go out in my backyard, and I see that now it's a sunny day, but in the same time there is wind. and I will make some photos and I will explain to you with those photos in my computer the effect of the shutter speed. You will see the motion blur in the pictures because I will make the photos, and you will see that even if you make a portrait outside and you have a subject, and you see that there is a small wind in it, and sometimes in the background, or even near your subject, there are some leaves, from the tree or something. That will be blurry if the wind is blowing, if you have very low shutter speed. So that's why I say you have to understand the effect of the low shutter speed or of the high shutter speed. Now, again, if you want to introduce, because sometimes if you want to be artistic, and you want to try something new, you can. And then, again, you can play with the shutter speed, and you can let a longer shutter speed. The example, evenings, when you go out, and you want to get these nice trails, in your photo. The example, cars are passing, and the light, it will remain in your photo. Then you need very long shutter speeds. That's a different story. But first of all, let's understand the effect of the low shutter speed in your photos. So let's get into my computer. I will make some photos and I will explain to you in my computer. So let's do that. So we are in my computer now, and let's open up Zoner Photo Studio and let's see those photos I was talking about. Now I just went out in my backyard and I made a few photos, on a bush, because you can see over here the effect of the shutter speed. Now I did a few also with a manual lens and also with auto lens, the autofocus lens, sorry. And I think I will show you the one with the autofocus, because the manual one does not have over here the aperture value, so you can see that I increased all the time the aperture. Now these photos were did with the zoom lens 55-200 Fuji zoom lens, and let's start with this. This is 1 second now. Yes, so let's start with this one. Now you can see over here that 1,250th of a second at f4.5, 55 millimeter. All the photos were done with 55 millimeter. Focal length, the equivalent on a full frame is 83 millimeter. So it's kind of like an 85 millimeter roughly. Now, usually the minimum shutter speed over here should be 1/80th of a second or 1/90th of a second, something like that. That's the minimum. But let's start from the higher shutter speeds. And the wind was blowing, so these leaves were moving. Now it wasn't really a stormy wind. It was just a slight wind. Like a really calm wind, I would say. But still you can see the effect. Now this is 1,250th of a second. You see, obviously the photo is sharp. You cannot see any movement because it is a fast shutter speed. We go down to this one. You see that it's 1/800th of a second. Again 4.5 aperture, the same millimeter, and you see that it's still grand. It's okay. Very sharp image. Look at that. It's and these images are not edited at all. These are just I took out of the camera, sticked in the computer, and that's it. Nothing else. Now this is 1/400th of a second, f6.4. You see that I changed the aperture over here, and still 1/400th of a second. You don't see any problem. You see that it's really sharp. Now we'll go back to the further one, which sorry, this is 1/400th again. This is 1/200th of a second. And you come here and you see that it's again sharp. It's not a problem at all. Now we go further down. Yeah, this is again 1/200th of a second. Sometimes I made more. This is 1/25th of a second. Now we're getting closer to the lower limit of the shutter speeds. Now, like I said, in a smaller wind like this, you see that already you can see a little bit of motion blur. If it's not that clean like the other one, you see that there is something just a little bit. It's not bad at all. I mean, this photo is usable. But if you look at the photo before this one, look at this. I mean, this is clean. You can see that it's really clean photo. Look at this over here. The focus is over here. It's really clean. Now this one, it's not that clean. You see that it's you can already see the motion blur. It's not really bad, but it's okay. And this is 1/25 of a second. Now we go further down, and this is again 1/25, 1 second. This is the one, it's 1/60th. Now I already went lower because it should be like 1/80th, 1/90th of a second, you know, but this is at 1/60th. So over here you can see that the image is not as clean at all. You can see the motion blur. Look over here, the motion blur, you know, it's evident in the photo. Look at this. Look, the motion blur is evident where the leaves were moving, you know, the motion blur is evident. So that's this is what I say, you know. Now this is 1/60th of a second, and let's not forget that the lens has image stabilization, and the image stabilization was on. Now I don't know if it is in the EXIF data over here. I don't think that it is. No, it's not. It doesn't show in the EXIF data, but I can guarantee you that the image stabilization was on. Now let's go a little bit further down, and let's see. This is 1/60th. This is 1/40th of a second. Now obviously I don't suggest you to do these kind of shutter speeds, but I want to show you the effect. So that's why we go down over here. Look at this. This is motion blur. You see over here, the leaf was moving. That's what I was telling you. If you have slower shutter speed, you have these kind of effects in your photo. Now obviously if the wind is higher, the shutter speed has to be higher as well. Now this is 1/40th. This is overexposed. This is 1/40th of a second again, and you can see that this is kind of acceptable, but still there is a lot of motion blur over here, you see. So it depends on the wind, it depends on the movement, you know, if it is fast or not fast. It depends, you know. If the movement in your shots will be very fast, then it means that your shutter speed has to be very fast as well. If you have a stationary subject, you can go lower down your shutter speed, no problem at all, but you have to understand the effect. You see, look at this motion blur. These leaves were moving. This is the effect you will get in your photos if you lower your shutter speed and you have movement in your photos. Now obviously this is 1/25 of a second. I mean, in a windy situation, this is not bad. I mean, this photo, you know, for that situation, that's not really bad, you know, it's okay. But in the same time, look at this motion blur, you know. It's yeah, you can see what I'm talking about. So I hope that this video was helpful to you guys. I hope that you liked it. Now if you think that I left something out of this video, please feel free and leave a comment down below. I think, in my opinion, it is really important to understand this effect, because by understanding this effect, you can make your photos sharp, tech sharp. Now obviously, like I said, it is depending very much about the fastness of the movement in your photos. Now if you want to make a photo about a fast running person, obviously your shutter speed has to be much higher. But in the same time, you have to exercise a lot to find out what is the best shutter speed for what situation. So I hope that this video was helpful to you guys. I hope that you liked it. If you liked it, please like and subscribe and share my videos. If you would like to support this channel, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and share my videos. And other than that, I wish you a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.